Which one of us did you mean to kill, father? The eldest boy's voice cut through the chapel just as Duke Adrian Blackwood reached for his bride's hand. 5 little boys stood beside the altar, each wearing a silver bracelet engraved with a different number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Adrian stared at them. They could not have been more than 3 years old, yet every child bore something of him. The eldest had his steady grey eyes. The second carried the same sharp line across his brow. The third clenched his left fist exactly as Adrian did when angered. Even the smallest had the pale streak above his right temple that had marked Blackwood heirs for generations. Behind the boys stood Eleanor, Adrian's lawful wife, the woman he had accused of adultery before Parliament, the woman he had driven from Blackwood House while she was carrying his children. A shocked murmur spread through the royal congregation. Eleanor heard her name pass from mouth to mouth, followed by words she had endured for 3 years. Adulteress, imposter, dead woman. Lady Celeste Ashford tightened her fingers around Adrian's arm. Your Grace, she whispered, this is some cruel performance. Have the guards remove them. 2 royal guards moved toward the aisle. Eleanor stepped in front of the boys. Touch one of my sons, she said, and the bishop will hear why 5 payments were made to have them buried. The guards stopped. Celeste's face remained composed, but her grip on Adrian's sleeve tightened. Adrian finally looked at Eleanor rather than the children. She wore a plain dark blue gown with no jewels except the thin gold chain that had once belonged to her mother. The woman he remembered had lowered her eyes whenever he raised his voice. This Eleanor met his stare without trembling. You are dead, he said. No, you merely found it convenient to believe I was. I saw your carriage after the fire. You saw burned wood and a body no one permitted you to examine. Adrian's jaw hardened. My physician identified you. The same physician who told you that I could never carry your child. Silence followed. The eldest boy reached back and found Eleanor's hand. She closed her fingers around his, though the gesture did little to quiet the fear moving beneath her ribs. She had rehearsed this moment every night during the journey to London. She had imagined Adrian denying her, accusing her, perhaps even ordering her arrested. She had not prepared herself for the way he looked at the boys. Not with love. Not yet. With the horror of a man seeing 5 living consequences of a choice he could never undo. Celeste stepped forward. Everyone here knows what this woman did. She disappeared with another man after attempting to force his grace to recognize an illegitimate child. 5 illegitimate children, Eleanor corrected. If you intend to repeat the lie, Lady Celeste, at least count its victims correctly. Several guests lowered their eyes to hide their reactions. The smallest boy tugged at Eleanor's skirt. Mama, is this the lady who has our house? Celeste went pale. Eleanor crouched and adjusted his bracelet. The engraved number 5 caught the candlelight. Stay beside your brothers, Samuel. Adrian flinched at the name. My father's name, he said. Your father was kinder to me than his son. The words struck their mark. Adrian looked away first. Eleanor rose and removed a narrow ledger from beneath her cloak. Its leather cover was scorched, and several pages had curled black at the edges. The fire that supposedly killed me was no accident, she said. Someone paid the driver to leave the North Road. Someone else waited near the bridge, with oil and a pistol. Adrian's expression changed. You expect me to believe you escaped such an attack while carrying 5 children? I expect nothing from you. A farmer pulled me from the carriage before it burned. His wife hid me until my sons were born. Why did you not send word? I did. Eleanor looked directly at Celeste. 6 letters, 2 to Blackwood House, 1 to your London residence, 1 to your solicitor, 1 to the bishop, and 1 to Lady Celeste, because she had once called herself my friend. Celeste gave a brittle laugh. I received no such letter. Then you will not object when the royal secretary examines your correspondence. The smile vanished from Celeste's lips. Adrian took 1 step toward Eleanor. If these boys are mine, why return today? Because yesterday a man came to the cottage where they were sleeping. Eleanor opened the burned ledger and placed it in the bishop's hands. 5 payments appeared on the final page. Each had been entered beside a number matching the bracelets worn by the children. The first payment had been made on the night of their birth, the second when they turned 1, the third 6 months later, the fourth after Eleanor sent her final letter to London. The 5th had been recorded that very morning. Adrian studied the page. What was purchased? Silence, Eleanor replied. Each payment increased whenever someone discovered that another child had survived. The eldest boy moved closer to his brothers. Adrian looked at all 5 bracelets again. Why number them? Because the men hunting us never learned their names. They called my sons 1 through 5. A cry of outrage rose from the pews. Celeste tried to take the ledger, but the bishop drew it away. This proves nothing, she said. There are no names, no signatures, and no indication that these sums concern the children. There is a seal. Eleanor turned the page. A patch of dark red wax remained beneath the final entry. The crest pressed into it had been damaged by fire, but the image of a hawk clutching a thorn branch was still visible. Every person in the chapel recognized it. The Ashford family seal. Celeste's father rose from the front pew. "This wedding is over," Adrian said. Celeste swung toward him. "You would disgrace me because an adulteress brought 5 borrowed children into a chapel." "No," Eleanor answered. "He will disgrace you because you made one mistake." She reached into the ledger's damaged spine and pulled out a folded strip of paper. "You paid for 5 graves," Eleanor said. "But the man you hired prepared 6. Adrian's face drained of colour. "For whom was the 6th? He asked. Before Eleanor could answer, the chapel doors slammed shut. A guard cried out from the vestibule. Then smoke began curling beneath the doors. "Get the children down!" Eleanor seized Samuel and pulled him behind the stone altar as smoke rolled across the chapel floor. The other boys followed, without crying. She had taught them what to do whenever danger came. Stay together, keep low, and obey the eldest. Adrian tore off his ceremonial coat and wrapped it around his fist. "Those doors open inward," he shouted. "Something is holding them from the other side." He threw his shoulder against the wood. 3 guards joined him, but the doors did not move. Flames appeared beneath the frame. The congregation surged toward the side aisle. "There is another exit through the vestry," the bishop called. Celeste's father reached it first. He pulled the iron handle, then cursed. "Locked." "It cannot be," the bishop said. "That door has no key." Eleanor looked toward the high windows, too narrow for an adult, but perhaps not for a child. "William," the eldest boy turned to her. "Do you remember the loft at the mill?" His face tightened, but he nodded. Eleanor pointed to the carved screen behind the choir stalls. "Climb to that window. Do not jump. Call for help and tell them the chapel is barred from outside." Adrian spun around. "You would send a child up there?" "I would send the child I trained to survive after his father left us defenseless." The rebuke stopped him. William ran toward the choir stalls. His 4 brothers helped push a wooden bench beneath the screen before Adrian could reach them. "I can lift him," Adrian said. William backed away. Eleanor saw the hurt cross Adrian's face, but she did not soften. "You are a stranger to him," she said. "Ask permission." Adrian stared at the boy who bore his eyes. "May I help you?" William looked at Eleanor. When she nodded, he allowed Adrian to lift him onto the carved ledge. The Duke's hands trembled. It was only for a moment, but Eleanor saw it. Adrian had carried no child before. He held William as though the boy might vanish if his grip became too tight or too loose. "Higher," William ordered. Adrian obeyed. The boy caught the edge of the window and pulled himself onto the narrow sill. He struck the glass with his bracelet until one pane shattered. "Fire!" he shouted through the opening. "The doors are tied shut." A bell began ringing outside. Adrian lowered William to the floor. Before he could speak, part of the main door burst inward, spraying burning splinters across the aisle. One landed on Celeste's veil. She screamed. Eleanor crossed the chapel, ripped the veil from Celeste's hair, and stamped out the flames. Celeste stared up at her. "You saved me." "I will not let my sons watch a woman burn," Eleanor replied. "Even you." Another blow struck the outer doors. Royal guards on the other side cut through the chain. When the doors finally opened, cold air rushed into the chapel and bent the flames back toward the entrance. "Move!" Adrian shouted. He formed a passage with the guards, while the guests fled. Eleanor took Samuel in her arms and ordered the other boys to hold one another's sleeves. Adrian reached for the 3rd child. The boy shrank behind his brothers. "Do not make them choose you during a fire," Eleanor said. "Clear the way." Adrian did. They emerged into the courtyard beneath a shower of black ash. Servants carried water from the palace fountains, while soldiers searched the chapel grounds. Eleanor counted the boys twice. William, James, Henry, Thomas, Samuel, all 5 were safe. Only then did her knees weaken. She turned away before the congregation could see, but Adrian caught her elbow. "You are injured. I am standing. There is blood on your sleeve." A shard of glass had cut her forearm when she tore the burning veil from Celeste. Eleanor had not felt it until that moment. Adrian reached for his handkerchief. She pulled away. "You do not get to play the devoted husband because witnesses are watching." His hand fell. "I was not pretending. That makes it worse." Adrian's expression tightened. "How?" "Because it means you were always capable of concern. You simply decided I did not deserve it when I needed you most." Before he could answer, a captain approached, carrying a length of scorched rope. "Your Grace, this was wound around the chapel handles. The fire was set with lamp oil. Whoever did it intended to keep everyone inside." "Did you see anyone leave?" Adrian asked. "A servant reported a man wearing royal livery near the north wall. We found the coat abandoned beside the gate." Eleanor examined the rope. A small brass hook remained tied to one end. It was shaped like a hawk, the emblem from the Ashford seal. Celeste gave a sharp breath. "That is not ours." Her father stepped between her and the captain. "Anyone could have copied our crest after seeing the ledger." Eleanor agreed. The seal was too convenient. So was the hook. Whoever had arranged the fire wanted suspicion to fall upon Celeste immediately. She looked toward the chapel steps. The burned ledger was gone. "The bishop had it," Eleanor said. The bishop searched beneath his robes, then looked around in alarm. "I placed it beside the altar when the door caught fire." Adrian ordered the captain to seal the courtyard. "No one leaves until it is found." Celeste lifted her chin. "You cannot imprison the royal family and half the peerage because she misplaced a book." "I did not misplace it," Eleanor said. Adrian turned toward her. "Can you prove what was written inside?" The ledger was not my only evidence. For the first time since Eleanor entered the chapel, Celeste looked genuinely afraid. Eleanor reached beneath the collar of Samuel's coat and drew out a small iron key. "The man who came to our cottage carried this," she said. "Before he died, he told me it opened a room beneath Blackwood House." Adrian stared at the key. "There is no room beneath Blackwood House." "Yes, there is." "How could you know?" "Because 3 years ago, while you were accusing me before Parliament, I found its entrance behind your father's portrait." The Duke's face changed. Eleanor lowered her voice. "There were 5 empty cradles inside, Adrian. Each one had a grave number carved into the wood." Adrian looked at his sons. "And the 6th grave, that one had a name." "Whose?" Eleanor was about to answer when William cried out. A man dressed as a palace servant had seized Samuel and was dragging him toward the north gate. The child kicked and screamed. Adrian drew his sword, but Eleanor was already running. Eleanor caught the servant's coat just before he reached the north gate. The man twisted and struck her across the face. She fell to one knee, but she did not release him. "Run, Samuel!" The little boy bit his captor's hand. The man shouted and loosened his grip. Samuel dropped to the ground and crawled beneath a parked carriage. Eleanor pulled the attacker backward with all her strength. He turned and raised a narrow knife. Adrian struck him from the side. Both men crashed against the gate. The knife skidded across the stones, and 3 guards rushed forward to pin the attacker down. Eleanor crawled toward the carriage. "Samuel." No answer came. She lowered herself until her injured cheek touched the cold ground. Her youngest son was curled behind one of the wheels, holding both hands over his mouth. "It is Mama," she said softly. "You may come out." Samuel shook his head. "The bad man will take me." "No one is taking you," he said. "Father gave me away." Eleanor's heart clenched. Adrian had come to stand behind her. At the child's words, he stopped. "What else did he say?" Eleanor asked. Samuel looked toward the Duke's polished boots. "He said father only needed 1 boy. He said the other 4 were mistakes." Adrian closed his eyes. Eleanor reached under the carriage. "You are not a mistake. Neither are your brothers." Samuel took her hand and allowed her to pull him out. The moment he was free, he buried his face against her shoulder. Adrian knelt several feet away. "Samuel." The child clung more tightly to Eleanor. Adrian swallowed. "I did not send that man." Samuel did not look at him. "I never knew you were alive," Adrian continued. "That does not excuse what I did to your mother, but I swear I did not give you away. Eleanor studied his face. Adrian had once made promises to her with the same solemn voice. He had promised that no rumor could turn him against her. He had promised that Blackwood House would always be her home. Then, one physician had questioned her pregnancy, and Adrian had broken both promises before sunset. Words will not make him trust you, she said. I know. It was the first answer Adrian had given that did not defend himself. The captain dragged the attacker into the courtyard. The man's stolen livery had torn at the shoulder, revealing a faded brand beneath his collarbone. Eleanor recognized it. That mark belonged to the old Blackwood workhouse. Adrian stood. My father closed it 20 years ago. No, the attacker said with a bloody smile. He only moved the work below ground. Adrian stepped toward him. Who hired you? The man laughed. You did, Your Grace. The courtyard fell silent. Adrian seized the front of his coat. Say that again. I never saw your face. I received your written orders and your money. From whom? A steward wearing the Blackwood chain. Adrian released him. His household steward had died 2 months earlier. According to the letter sent to Adrian in London, the old man had fallen from a horse near the southern boundary. Eleanor saw recognition in her husband's eyes. Your steward knew about the hidden room, she said. He served my father before he served me. And after you banished me, you gave him authority over every letter entering Blackwood House. Adrian's silence was an answer. He had made the choice. Someone else may have designed the lie. But Adrian had placed the means in that person's hands. The attacker glanced towards Samuel. 5 sons created a problem. Only one could inherit the title. The others could contradict whatever story was written for him. What story? Eleanor demanded. That the Duchess died, giving birth to a single heir. Eleanor rose slowly. You were going to steal one of my sons. The order changed. Who changed it? The man's smile disappeared. All 6 were to die before the wedding bells stopped. A clock began striking from inside the palace. 1, 2. Eleanor looked toward the chapel tower. The wedding bells were still ringing in alarm, their sound tangled with the clock. How long? She asked the captain. Until noon? Less than 15 minutes. Adrian faced the guards. Take the boys into the palace. Put 10 men at every entrance. No, Eleanor said. You heard him? Yes. I also heard that your household has been compromised. A uniform nearly carried Samuel through a courtyard filled with soldiers. Then where would you take them? With me. You cannot protect 5 children alone. I have protected them alone for 3 years. The words silenced him. Eleanor turned to William. Count your brothers. William touched each boy's shoulder. James, Henry, Thomas, Samuel. He counted again. His expression changed. Mama, what is it? Thomas is not Thomas. Eleanor stared at the 4th boy. He wore Thomas's brown coat and silver bracelet, but his face was hidden beneath the cap pulled low across his brow. She tore the cap away. The child was not her son. He was a frightened kitchen boy with tears running down his cheeks. Eleanor gripped his shoulders. Where is Thomas? A lady gave me a gold coin, he stammered. She told me to put on the coat and stand with the others. What lady? I do not know her name. Where did she take my son? The kitchen boy pointed toward the royal carriages. She said she was taking him home. Eleanor spun around. Only one carriage was moving. It rolled through the western gate, gathering speed as it turned toward the London road. A small hand struck the rear window from inside. Thomas! Eleanor screamed. Adrian ran toward the nearest horse, but Celeste stepped into his path. Do not follow that carriage. The Duke stopped. Celeste's face was white. Her voice shook. If you bring the boy back, she said, the other 4 will die before noon. Eleanor seized Celeste by the wrist. How do you know they will die? Celeste looked toward her father. The Earl of Ashford shook his head once. It was a warning. Celeste's lips parted, but no sound came. Eleanor tightened her grip. A carriage has taken my son. You have 5 seconds to decide whether you are frightened of your father or frightened of me. Eleanor, Adrian said, do not interrupt. Celeste's composure finally broke. There are 4 black boxes inside the palace nursery, she whispered, 1 beneath each bed. Eleanor's blood turned cold. What is inside them? I was told they contain smoke powder. If Thomas is rescued, a servant will light the fuses. The clock struck again. 5 minutes remained before noon. Eleanor turned to William. Take your brothers away from the palace. The courtyard is exposed, Adrian said. The chapel crypt, Eleanor replied. Its entrance is stone, and there is no passage into Blackwood property. The bishop nodded. I will take them. William caught Eleanor's hand. You are coming too. I have to bring Thomas back. But the man said we would die. Eleanor crouched before him. Look at me. You will keep your brothers together. You will stay beside the bishop until I return. William's chin trembled. What if you do not return? The question pierced the armor Eleanor had worn for 3 years. She pressed her forehead to his. Then remember that you were loved before you had names. You were loved before I knew whether any of us would survive. Nothing anyone says about me, or about your father, can change that. William wrapped both arms around her neck. Adrian looked away. Eleanor kissed each child, then placed Samuel's hand inside William's. Go. The bishop led them toward the crypt, while guards formed a shield around them. Adrian mounted the nearest horse. I am following the carriage. So am I. You are bleeding. My son is inside it. Adrian leaned down and held out his hand. For one instant, Eleanor saw the man she had married, the man who once lifted her onto his horse when a summer storm washed out the village bridge. Then she remembered the winter night he had ordered her carriage from Blackwood House. She did not take his hand. Bring me a horse. They raced through the western gate as the carriage disappeared around a bend. Eleanor rode beside Adrian, not behind him. The wound in her arm burned each time she pulled the reins, but she did not slow. Why would Celeste warn us? Adrian shouted over the pounding hooves. Because she knows the scheme no longer protects her. You believe she arranged it? I believe she lied about my letters. I believe her family seal appears on the payments. But I do not believe she controls the man who took Thomas. Why not? Because someone tried to burn her alive with the rest of us. Adrian's expression darkened. Her father, perhaps, or someone who benefits if both the Blackwood and Ashford families destroy each other. The carriage turned from the London road onto a narrow lane. Eleanor recognized the route. It leads to the river. Adrian urged his horse faster. Ahead, the carriage driver looked back and raised a pistol. Down, Adrian shouted. The shot cracked through the air. Eleanor's horse reared. She nearly lost the reins, but Adrian caught the bridle and steadied the animal. The delay cost them precious distance. The carriage reached an old stone bridge. Then it stopped. The driver jumped down and ran into the trees. Where is Thomas? Eleanor cried. She dismounted before her horse had fully halted and tore open the carriage door. The compartment was empty. A small silver bracelet lay on the seat. Number 4. Eleanor picked it up with shaking fingers. Adrian searched beneath the seats. There must be another road. No. Eleanor looked toward the river. The carriage's rear window was broken. A strip of brown cloth had caught on the frame. Thomas's coat. She ran to the bridge wall. Far below, the river moved fast between the rocks. Thomas! A faint cry answered from beneath the bridge. Mama! Eleanor climbed over the wall. Adrian caught her around the waist. What are you doing? He is below us. You will fall. Let go. Adrian looked down. Thomas was clinging to a support beam several feet beneath the road. His small boots swung above the river. The boy's fingers were slipping. Adrian removed his sword and coat. Tie the reins around me. Eleanor stared at him. You cannot reach him alone, and you cannot lower yourself with that arm. If you drop him, I will not. You dropped all of us once. Adrian's face tightened, but he did not argue. You are right, he said. Give me one chance not to do it again. Thomas screamed as one hand slipped from the beam. Eleanor tied the leather reins around Adrian's waist. She looped the other end around the stone post and braced her feet against the wall. Adrian lowered himself over the edge. Thomas, he called. Look at me. The child did. I am going to reach for you. Thomas began to cry. Are you my father? Adrian paused. Yes. Why did you not come before? The question struck harder than any accusation from Eleanor. Because I believed a lie when I should have protected your mother. Thomas's remaining hand slipped. Adrian lunged and caught him by the wrist. The full weight of both bodies pulled against the reins. Eleanor cried out as the leather tore through the wound on her arm. Hold him, she shouted. Adrian dragged Thomas against his chest. I have you. Eleanor pulled until every muscle in her back burned. 2 royal riders arrived and helped raise them over the wall. The moment Thomas touched the road, Eleanor fell to her knees and gathered him into her arms. "I knew you would come," he sobbed. "Always." Adrian remained on the ground, breathing hard. Thomas looked at him from Eleanor's embrace. "You caught me." "Yes." "Does that mean you want me?" Adrian's eyes filled. "I wanted 5 sons before I knew I had them," he said. "But wanting you means nothing unless I become a man you can trust." Thomas considered this, then reached out and placed his small hand against Adrian's cheek. It was not forgiveness, but it was the first time one of the boys had touched him willingly. A distant bell rang 12 times. No explosion followed. Eleanor exhaled. Her other sons were safe. Then Thomas whispered against her shoulder. "The lady in the carriage told me something." "What did she say?" "She said the 6th grave was not for you." Eleanor drew back. "Then whose name was carved upon it?" Thomas pointed at Adrian. "His." Adrian stared at Thomas. "Did the lady say why the grave carried my name?" Thomas shook his head. "She said you would be inside it before dark." Adrian rose and searched the abandoned carriage again. Beneath the driver's seat, he found a folded wedding program. A black line had been drawn through his name. Below it were 6 words. "The widow will rule for the heir." Eleanor read the message twice. "Celeste was meant to become your widow, but our marriage was not completed. Someone expected it to be. They did not know I would reach the chapel before you exchanged vows." Adrian looked toward the road. "They plan to kill me after the ceremony and keep one of the boys alive as my heir. A 3-year-old heir would need a guardian. Celeste, or her father." Thomas touched Eleanor's injured arm. "Mama, the lady who took me, was crying. Did she have dark hair?" "Yes." "Was she wearing a wedding dress?" "No, she wore a grey cloak." Eleanor looked at Adrian. Celeste had remained in the courtyard. The woman in the carriage had been someone else. "Then Celeste knows only part of the plan," Eleanor said. "We need her alive long enough to tell us what she knows." Adrian lifted Thomas onto Eleanor's horse. "You will ride with your mother." Thomas looked at him. "Where will you ride?" "Beside you." "Why?" Adrian glanced at Eleanor before answering. "Because I should have ridden beside both of you 3 years ago." When they returned to the palace, the courtyard was nearly empty. The wedding guests had been taken into the royal hall for questioning. The 4 boys waited inside the chapel crypt with the bishop, safe and unharmed. Eleanor allowed herself one breath of relief when Thomas ran into his brother's arms. William examined his bracelet. "You lost number 4. Thomas opened his hand. Eleanor had given the bracelet back to him during the ride. "I found it again." The 5 boys pressed together, speaking at once. Their voices echoed against the stone walls. Adrian stood near the crypt entrance. None of the children invited him closer. Eleanor noticed his expression, but she refused to rescue him from the consequence of his absence. "You wanted them removed before they were born," she said quietly. "You cannot expect them to make room for you in a single afternoon. I did not know there were 5. You believed one child was enough to condemn me." Adrian lowered his gaze. "I told Parliament you had betrayed our marriage." "Yes." "I ordered your name removed from the household prayers." "Yes." "I gave your rooms to Celeste." Eleanor's voice became colder. "Yes." He struggled to continue. "I signed the order sending you away without an escort. That is the choice that nearly killed us." "I know." "No, Adrian. You know the sentence. You do not know what it meant." She stepped closer. "It meant walking 2 miles through snow after my carriage overturned. It meant giving birth in a farmhouse while men searched the road for my body. It meant holding 5 premature babies against my skin because there was not enough coal to warm the room." Adrian's face crumpled. Eleanor did not stop. "It meant choosing which child received milk first when all 5 were crying. It meant sleeping beside the door with a knife, because every hoofbeat might belong to someone you had empowered. I did not order their deaths. You created the silence in which someone else could." Adrian looked at his sons. "What can I do? Tell the truth publicly. Return what you took. Then wait while I decide whether you are ever permitted near them." Before he could answer, the captain entered the crypt. "Lady Celeste has disappeared." Adrian turned. "What about her father?" "Gone as well. His carriage left through the eastern gate during the fire." Eleanor looked toward the boys. "Double the guard here." The captain hesitated. "There is something else. We searched the palace nursery. There were no black boxes beneath the beds." Celeste lied, Adrian said. "No," Eleanor replied. She gave us a reason to move the boys into the crypt. Every face turned toward her. The stone chamber suddenly felt smaller. Why would she want them here? The bishop asked. Eleanor remembered the old workhouse, the underground room, and the iron key taken from the attacker. Because this crypt may connect to Blackwood land. Adrian shook his head. The estate is 20 miles away. Not the house. The London property your father sold to the Crown. A soft, scraping sound came from beneath the floor. The boys stopped talking. Eleanor pulled Thomas behind her. One of the stone slabs moved. A narrow gap opened near the wall, and the smell of damp earth rose into the crypt. The bishop rushed toward the door. It slammed shut before he reached it. The lamps went out. Samuel screamed. "Everyone stay still," Eleanor ordered. Footsteps moved beneath the floor. Adrian drew his sword. A man's voice came through the darkness. "Your Grace, place the iron key on the ground." Eleanor recognized the voice. It belonged to the physician who had declared her pregnancy impossible. The physician who had identified her burned body. The physician who had supposedly died 2 years ago. "Show yourself," Adrian demanded. A lantern appeared beneath the raised stone. The physician climbed into the crypt, holding a pistol against Celeste's back. Her wedding gown was stained with soot. A bruise darkened one side of her face. "I tried to warn you," she whispered. Her father climbed up behind them. The Earl of Ashford held the missing ledger. "The wedding should have solved everything," he said. Eleanor would remain dead. Adrian would die in a riding accident. Celeste would become guardian to his only surviving son. "You intended to murder 4 children," Adrian said. 5, if necessary. Celeste turned on her father. "You promised none of the boys would be harmed. I promised you a duchy." Eleanor moved between the pistol and her sons. "You lost the moment Thomas was rescued." The Earl smiled. "No, Duchess. Thomas was never the child we intended to keep." His gaze settled upon William. "The eldest carries the title." William reached for Eleanor. The physician cocked the pistol. "Give us number 1, the Earl said, "or we bury all 6 Blackwoods in the room, prepared for them." "No." Eleanor's answer was calm enough to unsettle the physician. The pistol shifted toward her. "You misunderstand your position." "No, you misunderstand my sons." She placed one hand on William's shoulder. "You assumed the bracelet marked the firstborn." The Earl of Ashford looked at the silver number around the boy's wrist. "It does." Eleanor smiled without warmth. "I change the bracelets every week." Adrian turned toward her. Even he had not known. "You numbered the boys to hunt them," Eleanor continued. "I used those numbers to confuse you. None of them knows who was born first. No record carries the order. Only I do." The Earl's confidence faltered. "Then tell me, you planned to murder 4 children after stealing the heir. Why would I place his life in your hands?" The physician pressed the pistol harder against Celeste's back. "Choose, Duchess, the girl or the boys." Celeste's eyes met Eleanor's. "Do not give him, William." The physician struck her with the pistol. She fell against the stone floor. Adrian moved, but the Earl raised a second weapon. "One step, Blackwood, and your bride dies." "She is not my bride," Adrian said. Celeste flinched. Adrian did not look away from the Earl. "My lawful wife is standing beside my sons. The wedding you arranged was founded upon a false death, and therefore could never give you control of Blackwood. Parliament accepted Eleanor's death, because I allowed false evidence to stand, and you will continue allowing it." "No." The single word carried through the crypt. Eleanor looked at him. Adrian lowered his sword and placed it on the floor. Then he removed the ducal signet ring from his finger. "I will appear before Parliament today. I will confess that I accused Eleanor without proof, abandoned her while she was pregnant, and gave authority to the men who tried to kill her." The Earl laughed. "You would destroy your own name? I already destroyed it when I used that name against an innocent woman." He dropped the ring beside the sword. For 3 years, Eleanor had imagined Adrian admitting the truth. In those dreams, she always felt triumph. Now, she felt only the weight of everything the confession could not restore. The Earl gestured toward William. "Enough, bring me the child." Eleanor stepped back. Her heel touched the iron key, lying near the raised slab. She had dropped it when the physician entered, but neither man had noticed. Eleanor pressed her shoe over it. "What happens after you take him?" she asked. "He becomes Duke of Blackwood before sunset." "And Celeste?" "She becomes his guardian." Celeste pushed herself onto one elbow. "You told me Adrian would suffer an accident. Years from now, you believed what was useful to believe. The words struck Celeste with the same cruelty Adrian had once used against Eleanor. Celeste stared at her father. You burned Eleanor's letters. Yes. You paid the physician to declare her unfaithful. Yes. You told me the children belonged to another man. They were obstacles. Their blood was irrelevant. Celeste's face changed. Not with surprise, with recognition. At last, she saw that she had never been a beloved daughter or a chosen bride. She was another instrument her father intended to discard when it ceased to serve him. The physician pulled her to her feet. Move. Celeste stumbled forward. Then she drove the sharp heel of her wedding shoe into his foot. The pistol fired. The shot struck the crypt ceiling. Adrian lunged for his sword. Eleanor kicked the iron key into the open passage and shoved William behind the stone altar. The other boys scattered exactly as she had trained them to do. The physician caught Celeste by the hair, but she twisted and bit his hand. Adrian struck the pistol away and drove the man against the wall. The Earl fired at Eleanor. The bishop pulled her aside. The ball shattered a stone angel where her head had been. Smoke filled the chamber. Take the children through the passage, Eleanor shouted. I do not know where it leads, the bishop replied. Neither do they. That is why we follow them. She pushed the 4 youngest boys toward the opening. William remained behind the altar. The Earl saw him. There is my heir. He rushed forward. Eleanor stepped between them. The Earl struck her injured arm. Pain blinded her for a moment, but she caught his wrist before he could reach William. You should have stayed dead, he hissed. You should have learned what a mother will survive. She drove her knee into his stomach. He staggered backward, caught the edge of the raised slab, and fell into the passage. The missing ledger slipped from inside his coat. Eleanor seized it. Go, she ordered William. The boy climbed through the opening after his brothers. Celeste followed, then the bishop. Adrian still struggled with the physician. The man drew a second knife and slashed Adrian across the shoulder. Eleanor picked up the fallen pistol. Move away from my husband. Both men froze. The word had escaped before she could stop it. My husband. Adrian looked at her, but Eleanor kept the weapon aimed at the physician. This pistol has fired, he said. It is empty. Eleanor pulled back the second hammer. It has 2 barrels. The physician released Adrian. Into the passage, Eleanor ordered. He obeyed. Adrian pressed one hand against his bleeding shoulder. You remembered the pistol. I remember every weapon used against me. She did not offer him assistance. Together, they entered the underground tunnel. The passage descended beneath the crypt, then divided in 2. The boys stood at the fork beside the bishop and Celeste. The iron key lay near a locked gate on the left. Eleanor picked it up and fitted it into the lock. The gate opened. Beyond it waited 6 wooden cradles. 5 were small enough for infants. The 6th was the size of a coffin. Adrian approached it. His name had been carved across the lid. Beneath the name was a date. Today's date. Celeste covered her mouth. Eleanor opened the burned ledger. The final page had seemed blank when she first recovered it, but heat from the chapel fire had darkened a hidden line of ink. She read the sentence aloud. Upon the Duke's death, the surviving numbered heir shall be placed under Ashford guardianship. Adrian examined the signature beneath it. That is mine. Eleanor stared at him. You signed this? I have never seen this page, but the signature is genuine. Adrian's face drained of colour. Then he remembered. 3 years earlier, on the night he banished Eleanor, his steward had brought him a stack of blank transfer papers. Adrian had signed every one without reading them, because he had been too angry to remain in the room. His own reckless hand had authorised the plan. Before he could confess, a metal gate crashed shut behind them. The Earl of Ashford stood on the other side. He held a burning torch over a trail of black powder. You wanted all 5 sons, he said. Now you may share one grave with them. The Earl of Ashford lowered the torch. Celeste tore the veil from her hair. Eleanor! She threw it through the bars. Eleanor caught the lace and dropped it over the trail of black powder just as the torch fell. The fabric ignited, but the flame could not reach the powder beneath it. Move the cradle, Eleanor shouted. Adrian understood first. He overturned the 6th wooden box and shoved it against the gate. Eleanor pressed the heavy lid across the burning veil, smothering the flames between 2 layers of wood. Smoke escaped through the cracks. The Earl cursed and reached for another torch. William picked up a loose stone and threw it between the bars. It struck Ashford's wrist. The torch dropped into the passage behind him. "Run, boys!" Eleanor ordered. There was no visible exit, but she had noticed a current of cold air near the far wall. Air meant an opening. She followed it past the 5 infant cradles. A narrow iron wheel protruded from the stone. Eleanor pulled it. Nothing happened. Adrian joined her. Together, they turned the wheel until a hidden door opened several inches. Daylight appeared on the other side. The physician rushed toward them. "You will not leave." Celeste stepped into his path. He struck her, but the delay gave Adrian enough time to force the door wider. "Take the boys out," Eleanor said. The bishop crawled through first. Samuel followed, then Henry, James, Thomas, and William. Celeste reached the opening next. She looked back at her father. "You made me believe another woman had to be destroyed before I could have a life." Ashford pressed himself against the gate. "I gave you everything." "No, you taught me to mistake possession for love." She climbed out. Eleanor followed, carrying the ledger beneath her injured arm. Adrian remained behind. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "The physician. He tried to kill us. He also knows every person involved." Adrian grabbed the man by the collar and dragged him toward the opening. The physician fought him, striking the wound in his shoulder. The Earl managed to reach through the bars and caught Adrian's coat. "You owe me this duchy," he shouted. Adrian tore himself free. "I owe my wife the truth." He pushed the physician through the opening, then followed. A second spark caught the black powder. This time, no veil covered it. "Down!" Eleanor screamed. The blast tore through the underground chamber. Stone and smoke erupted from the hidden doorway. Adrian threw himself across Eleanor and the boys as the ground shook beneath them. For several seconds, Eleanor could hear nothing. Then Samuel began crying beneath her arm. She lifted her head. They had emerged inside an abandoned courtyard behind the palace kitchens. The hidden door had collapsed, sealing Ashford on the other side. Celeste stared at the broken stone. "My father is under there." The physician laughed weakly. "He built his own grave." Eleanor rose. "Is there another exit?" The man's laughter stopped. He looked toward the northern wall. Adrian followed his gaze. "There is." The physician said nothing. A royal captain arrived with armed guards. "Search every passage beneath the palace," Adrian ordered. "The Earl is not to leave London." The captain looked from Adrian's blood-stained shoulder to Eleanor and the children. "Your Grace, we have different orders." "From whom?" "The Royal Council." The guards surrounded Eleanor. Adrian moved in front of her. "Explain yourself." The captain produced a document. "Duchess Eleanor Blackwood is to be detained for conspiracy against the crown, attempted murder at a royal wedding, and the unlawful presentation of 5 children as heirs to a ducal title." Celeste stepped forward. "That is absurd. My father planned the fire. Then he will be questioned when he is found." "You have the physician," Adrian said. "He can confirm Eleanor's account." The captain turned. The physician was gone. During the confusion, he had slipped through a servant's gate. Eleanor looked at the ledger. "It contains the payments." The captain opened it. Most of the pages had been damaged by water and fire. The final agreement remained visible, along with Adrian's genuine signature. But the hidden sentence identifying Ashford guardianship had vanished beneath a fresh smear of black ink. Someone had altered it while they escaped. The remaining words appeared to authorize Eleanor's death and the removal of her children. The captain read them aloud. "Upon confirmation of the Duchess's false issue, all numbered claimants shall be removed under the authority of Adrian Blackwood." The boys stared at their father. Samuel stepped away from him. "You did give us away." "No," Adrian said. "That is not what the page said." "No." The captain folded the ledger. "Yet it carries your signature." Adrian looked at Eleanor. She could see the question tearing through him. Would she believe him now, when he had refused to believe her? Eleanor took William's hand. "I believe he did not write those words." Adrian's breath caught. "But he signed the blank page that allowed someone else to write them," she continued. "He remains responsible for placing his power above the need for truth." The captain gestured toward the palace. "You will all answer before the Royal Council." "All?" Eleanor asked. "The Duke has also been summoned. Until the boys' legitimacy is established, they will remain under Crown protection." "No," Eleanor said. The guards moved toward the children. The 5 boys pressed together. Adrian drew his sword again. The captain's men raised their muskets. "Stand down, Your Grace." Adrian looked at the weapons pointed toward his sons. Then he did what no Blackwood Duke had done in 400 years. He broke his sword across the stone fountain and dropped both pieces at the captain's feet. "I surrender my title, my estates, and every royal office I possess," he said. "But you will not separate those children from their mother." The courtyard fell silent. Eleanor stared at him. The captain slowly lowered his hand. "You cannot surrender a hereditary title without Parliament." "Then take me to Parliament." A voice came from the palace balcony above them. "That will not be necessary." The king stood between 2 royal guards. In his hand was the missing page from the ledger. "I know who altered the evidence," he said, "and the traitor is standing among you." The king descended into the courtyard. Every guard bowed except the captain. He remained beside Eleanor with one hand resting on the damaged ledger. The king noticed. "So eager to arrest the Duchess," he said, "yet strangely unwilling to pursue the physician who escaped through the gate behind you." The captain's face tightened. "I did not see him leave, Your Majesty." "No, you were occupied altering the evidence." The king held up the missing page. A royal guard stepped forward carrying a black leather glove. Fresh ink stained its fingertips. The captain looked at his own bare hand. "The page was found inside the physician's abandoned coat," the king said. "The ink upon it matches the ink on your glove." Adrian moved toward the captain. "You served under my father. I served the crown. You served whoever paid you." The captain drew a pistol. Before he could raise it, Eleanor struck his wrist with the iron key. The weapon fell. Celeste kicked it across the courtyard, and the royal guards seized him. The king faced the courtyard. The captain altered the ledger, allowed the physician to escape, and delivered false orders in my name. He did not create the conspiracy, but he kept Ashford's plan alive after the chapel fire. The boys looked from the captured captain to the Earl of Ashford. Eleanor lowered herself beside them. "Ashford planned the murders," she said. "The physician created the lie, and this officer tried to hide their evidence. Remember the difference." The king faced the courtyard. The captain altered the ledger, allowed the physician to escape, and then used the evidence he had corrupted to arrest Eleanor. He was not investigating Ashford's conspiracy. He was protecting it. The 5 boys looked from the captured captain to the damaged ledger. For the first time, the danger had a clear shape. Ashford gave the orders, and the captain erased anyone who could expose them. The king unfolded the recovered page. Unlike the altered ledger, it carried the original agreement. "Upon the Duke's death," he read, "the surviving numbered heir shall be placed under Ashford guardianship. The Duchess, her remaining issue, and all witnesses to the births shall be permanently removed." The 5 boys stood perfectly still. They did not understand every word, but they understood enough. Samuel looked at Eleanor. "Does removed mean dead?" Eleanor knelt before him. "Yes. Even the lady who helped you when we were born?" Eleanor felt the courtyard tilt beneath her. "The farmer's wife?" Samuel nodded. "A man asked me where she lived. I did not tell him." "When?" "Before we came to the wedding. Someone had questioned her children before they even entered the chapel." Eleanor turned toward the captured captain, who was sent to the farmhouse. He smiled. "You will discover that when you return." Adrian struck him. The blow sent the captain to the stones. "Adrian," the king warned, "he threatened the woman who delivered my sons, and he will answer under law. You will not repair your abuse of power by abusing it again." The rebuke landed heavily. Adrian stepped back. "You are right, Your Majesty." "Te." The captain wiped blood from his mouth. "No court will recognize those children. There is no birth record, no noble witness, only an adulteress who arrived with 5 boys and a story designed to seize a fortune." Eleanor rose. "I do not need a noble witness. You need someone alive." The captain's meaning was clear. The farmer and his wife were now targets. Perhaps they were already dead. Eleanor looked at the king. "I request permission to leave for the farmhouse immediately." "Denied," the king said. Adrian moved beside her. "Then, I request." "Also denied." The king turned toward the palace. "The royal council has assembled. The accusation against Eleanor was made publicly 3 years ago. It will be answered publicly today." The great hall still carried the decorations intended for Adrian and Celeste's wedding feast. White roses covered the tables. 5 untouched cakes stood beneath the Blackwood crest. At the far end, members of Parliament and the Royal Council waited beneath the throne. Eleanor entered with her sons. 3 years earlier, she had left this hall alone, while noblemen whispered that she had deceived her husband. Now 5 children walked beside her, each wearing Adrian's face. The whispering began again. This time, it did not shame her. Adrian entered behind them without his sword or signet ring. He stopped before the council. "I request to speak first." A minister rose. "This hearing concerns the legitimacy of the children." "No," Adrian said. "It concerns the legitimacy of my actions." Eleanor watched him carefully. Adrian faced the same nobles who had heard him denounce her. 3 years ago, I accused my wife of adultery without a witness, a letter, or a single piece of proof beyond one physician's word. Adrian faced the nobles, who had once accepted his accusation without question. Eleanor begged me for 1 day to seek another examination. I gave her 10 minutes to leave. James tightened his hand around Eleanor's fingers. "I sent a pregnant woman into winter without money or protection," Adrian continued. "Then I signed blank papers and gave control of her letters to the very men who wanted her dead." He turned toward his sons. "They created the conspiracy, but my pride opened the door for them." A minister frowned. "You were deceived." "I was willing to be deceived. That is my guilt." Eleanor's eyes burned, but she did not lower them. Adrian turned toward her before the entire hall. "I cannot ask Duchess Eleanor to forgive me. I can only state that every accusation I made against her was unsupported. Every punishment I imposed was unjust, and every danger she and the boys faced began with my choice." The words did not erase the snow. They did not erase the hunger, the fear, or the nights Eleanor believed one of the babies would stop breathing before dawn. But for the first time, Adrian had named his wrongdoing without asking her to comfort him afterward. The king addressed Eleanor. "Do you accept the Duke's confession?" "I accept that he has finally told the truth." "Do you ask that his title be restored?" "That is not my decision." "Do you ask that your marriage be restored?" Eleanor looked at Adrian. "Our marriage was never legally ended, but whether it continues in anything beyond law will be my decision." Adrian bowed his head. "Yes." The doors opened. Royal guards entered with the Earl of Ashford in chains. Dust and blood covered his clothes, but he was alive. The physician walked behind him under guard. The king turned to Eleanor. Both men were captured at the northern tunnel. The physician raised his chin. "You may imprison me," he said, "but the boys still cannot inherit." "Why not?" Adrian demanded. "Because the woman who delivered them is dead. The record of their birth was burned, and no one can prove which child was born first." William took Eleanor's hand. The physician smiled at him. "Without an identified firstborn, there is no heir." Eleanor reached into the scorched ledger. "You are wrong." From inside its leather spine, she removed a narrow strip of cloth embroidered with 5 names and 5 times. The physician's smile vanished. Eleanor held it before Parliament. "The woman who delivered my sons recorded each birth upon the blanket that wrapped them." The Earl of Ashford laughed. "A piece of cloth proves nothing." A voice answered from the doorway. "It proves everything when the woman who stitched it is alive." The farmer's wife entered the hall, but she was not alone. Beside her stood the supposedly dead Blackwood steward, the man who had carried Eleanor's letters, prepared Adrian's blank documents, and then vanished before the wedding. He pointed directly at Adrian. "The Duke knew about all 5 boys," he said. "And I can prove he ordered their deaths." Adrian did not defend himself. He looked at the steward and said, "Show them." The steward approached the royal council and placed a folded letter on the table. A Blackwood seal closed the paper. Adrian's signature appeared beneath 3 short lines. "The false children are to be removed. The woman is not to return. See that all 5 are silenced." A murmur swept through the hall. Samuel began to cry. Eleanor pulled him against her skirt before reading the letter again. The signature appeared genuine. So did the seal. The steward faced Parliament. "Duke Adrian gave me this order 4 days before the carriage fire. I obeyed because he was my master." The Earl of Ashford smiled from between the guards. Even Celeste seemed shaken. Adrian looked at Eleanor. "I did not write those words." "Did you sign the page?" she asked. "I may have signed it blank." "Then answer carefully." "You ordered me out of Blackwood House, forbade my return, and gave the steward control of every letter written in my name, Eleanor said. Adrian did not look away. I did all three, he admitted. Those choices gave him the power to harm you, but I never ordered the death of you or our children. Samuel looked up at him. Then why does the letter say 5? Adrian's silence drew every eye in the hall back to the steward. Eleanor turned toward the man. That is the question you cannot answer. Eleanor studied the letter once more. You claim Adrian wrote this 4 days before the carriage fire. At that time, he believed I carried one child. She raised the paper so Parliament could see the final line. But this order names all 5. The steward's face lost its colour. Not even I knew there were 5 until the last baby was born. Eleanor continued. So this letter could not have existed on the date you gave. The steward glanced toward Ashford. It lasted less than a second, but everyone in the hall saw it. William pointed at him. He is waiting for that man to tell him what to say. Eleanor continued. You did not receive this before the fire. You wrote it after the births. That is impossible. The Duke's seal was kept in the West Study. Adrian's voice hardened. You had access to it every day. The steward stepped backward. Eleanor placed the false order beside the altered ledger. The same phrase appears in both documents, are to be removed. Adrian does not write that way. The minister frowned. How does the Duke write? Eleanor looked at her husband. He gives orders, directly, even cruel ones. She remembered the paper Adrian had placed in her hands 3 years earlier. You will leave Blackwood House before sunset. Not, the Duchess is to be removed. Not, the woman is not to return. Adrian had hurt her openly. The steward's language hid responsibility behind passive words. The wording proves nothing, Ashford said. Then perhaps the seal will. Eleanor did not examine its colour or shape. She simply broke it from the paper and turned it over. A thin layer of white wedding wax covered older black wax beneath. The letter was resealed this morning, she said. Celeste stepped forward. My father ordered black wax from our chapel melted beneath the wedding candles. I saw the steward carrying the tray. Ashford's face hardened. You ungrateful fool. No, Celeste replied. I was a fool when I believed ruining Eleanor would make you love me. The king addressed the steward. You may tell the truth now, or you may share every charge faced by Ashford. The steward's shoulders collapsed. He promised me Blackwood land, he whispered. Speak so the hall can hear you, Eleanor said. The man raised his voice. The Earl learned of the 5 births through the physician. He ordered one boy preserved and the others killed. I intercepted the Duchess's letters and sent false reports that she had died. And Adrian? The king asked. He knew nothing of the children. The boys looked toward their father. The steward continued. But he signed the papers. He gave me his seal. He refused to read anything that carried his wife's name. Adrian accepted each sentence without protest. Eleanor faced the steward. Tell Parliament exactly what happened. The man looked toward Ashford, but the Earl could no longer protect him. Lord Ashford ordered the carriage fire. The physician supplied the lie about the pregnancy, and I intercepted every letter the Duchess sent afterward. Samuel gripped Eleanor's skirt. And father? He asked. The steward lowered his eyes. Your father never ordered anyone to kill you, but he signed blank papers, surrendered his seal, and refused to read anything bearing your mother's name. Lord Ashford used the authority he was given. Adrian looked at his sons. I did not light the fire, he said, but my choices opened the door to the men who did. Eleanor held his gaze. It was the clearest truth spoken in the hall. Eleanor turned toward Parliament. The chain is complete. Ashford wanted control of the Blackwood title. The physician declared my pregnancy illegitimate. The steward buried my letters and used Adrian's unchecked signature. The captain altered the evidence when their plan began to fail. She looked at Adrian. My husband did not order our deaths, but his pride gave every one of them the power they needed. No one in the hall could mistake the truth now. The farmer's wife approached the council. I delivered the 5 boys between 11 minutes before midnight and 16 minutes after. I stitched each name and time into the blanket because I feared someone would take one child and deny the others. She laid a small parish Bible beside the cloth. The farmer recorded the births on the same night. The bishop of our district signed the page the following morning. The king examined both records. Which child was born first? The king asked. Eleanor looked at the 5 silver bracelets. While the killers were searching for number 1, I changed the bracelets repeatedly so they could never identify the heir. Now that the men hunting us have been exposed, the truth can finally be recorded. She removed William's bracelet and exchanged it with the one worn by James. James was born first. James was born first, she said. I called him number 2 because the men hunting us believed number 1 was the heir. James stared at her. Am I different now? Eleanor knelt. No, you are still your brother's equal. Do I have to be a duke? Not today. The boy seemed relieved. The council accepted the parish record and the farmer's wife's testimony. One by one, the 5 children were entered into the Blackwood family register. James Adrian Blackwood, firstborn and lawful heir. William, Henry, Thomas, and Samuel, his lawful brothers. Eleanor's name was restored as their mother and as Duchess of Blackwood. The accusation of adultery was struck from the parliamentary record. Adrian's confession was added in its place. The king turned toward the Earl of Ashford. You conspired to murder a duke, his lawful wife, and 5 children. You falsified royal records, corrupted officers of the crown, and set fire to a royal chapel. Ashford tried to speak. The king raised one hand. You will speak at your trial. The guards removed him, the physician, the captain, and the steward from the hall. Celeste remained. She stood without her veil, her title uncertain, and her reputation destroyed. Eleanor approached her. You helped your father take my home. Yes. You burned one of my letters. Celeste's eyes filled. Yes. Yes. You also saved my sons in the crypt. I do not expect that to erase what I did. It does not. Eleanor turned to the king. Lady Celeste should testify at the trial. Afterward, let the law decide the rest. Celeste bowed her head. It was neither vengeance nor forgiveness. It was justice. The king faced Adrian. Your wife and sons have been restored. Your own position remains unresolved. Do you still intend to surrender everything? Yes. Adrian removed the last symbol of rank from his coat and placed it before Eleanor. Blackwood House was her home before I used it as a weapon against her. The income from the Western estates will be placed in her independent trust. She will hold sole guardianship of the boys until she chooses otherwise. A minister objected. The heir belongs at the ducal estate. Adrian turned on him. My sons are not property belonging to a house. Then, before the king, Parliament, and the 5 children who carried his face, Duke Adrian Blackwood knelt before his wife. He did not offer her a ring. He offered her the keys to Blackwood House. I once ordered you out before sunset, he said. Today, I leave before sunset. You may decide whether I ever cross that threshold again. Eleanor looked at the keys in his open hand. Then she closed his fingers around them. Not yet, she said. Adrian bowed his head. Eleanor took her sons and walked from the great hall without him. But when she reached the doors, James looked back. Father? Adrian lifted his head. James held out his silver bracelet. You should keep number 1 until we know where you live. Adrian took it with shaking hands. Eleanor said nothing, yet for the first time she did not call her son back. Adrian left Blackwood House before sunset. He took no carriage, servants, or ducal possessions. He carried only a small travelling case and the silver bracelet James had placed in his hand. Eleanor watched from an upstairs window as he walked through the gates alone. 3 years earlier, she had departed by the same road while snow covered the ground. Adrian had not watched her leave. Now all 5 boys stood beside her. Where will father live? Thomas asked. In the old gatekeeper's cottage. Is he being punished? And Eleanor considered the question. He is learning that saying sorry does not immediately return what his choices destroyed. Samuel pressed his face against the glass. Will he come back? That will depend on what he does when no one is applauding him. The trials lasted 6 weeks. The Earl of Ashford was convicted of conspiracy against the crown, attempted murder, a falsification of royal records, and the murder of 2 servants who had discovered the underground chambers. His title and estates were forfeited, and he was imprisoned for life. The physician admitted that he had lied about Eleanor's pregnancy, identified another woman's body as hers, and accepted payment for providing information about the boys. He lost his medical license and was sentenced to prison. The corrupt captain and Blackwood steward were stripped of their positions and convicted for their roles in the conspiracy. Celeste testified against her father. The court did not excuse her decision to burn Eleanor's first letter or help spread the adultery accusation. Her inheritance was placed under supervision, and she was ordered to fund the families harmed by the conspiracy. Before leaving London, Celeste asked to see Eleanor. "I envied you," she confessed. "Your position, your marriage, even the way people listened when you entered a room. They stopped listening when Adrian accused me. I know, and I helped them stop." Eleanor did not offer forgiveness, but she allowed Celeste to leave without humiliation. "Build something that does not require another woman's ruin," she said. Celeste bowed her head. "I will." Parliament published a formal correction bearing Adrian's signature. Duchess Eleanor Blackwood had never committed adultery. Her 5 sons were legitimate. Every property taken from her was returned, including the inheritance Adrian had seized after declaring her dead. The Western estate was transferred into a trust controlled solely by Eleanor, and Blackwood House could no longer be used to remove her or her children without her written consent. Adrian surrendered his royal offices. He retained the title because Parliament would not dissolve a hereditary dukedom, but he placed the management of the estates under an independent council selected by Eleanor and the tenants. Then, he began repairing what a public confession alone could not. He personally visited every household employee dismissed for defending Eleanor. He restored their wages and apologized without asking any of them to return. He reopened the old Blackwood workhouse as a refuge for abandoned mothers and children. Eleanor chose its governors. Adrian provided the money, but accepted no place on its board. Most importantly, he did not enter Blackwood House without permission. Every morning, he walked from the gatekeeper's cottage to the garden wall and waited. Sometimes Eleanor allowed him to see the boys. Sometimes she did not. He never protested. At first, the children watched him as though he might disappear. Adrian learned their differences. James, the true firstborn, disliked being called the heir and loved building towers from books. William climbed everything he could reach. Henry asked questions no adult could answer. Thomas wanted to ride every horse on the estate. Samuel still woke from dreams in which a stranger carried him through the palace gate. On those nights, Adrian sat outside the nursery because Samuel would not allow him inside. He remained there until morning. Winter returned. On the anniversary of Eleanor's banishment, snow covered the road beyond Blackwood House. Adrian stood at the gates, holding 5 small wooden horses he had carved himself. They were imperfect. One had uneven legs, and another looked more like a dog. The boys loved them. "You made these?" Henry asked. "I attempted to. Mother's better at fixing things." Adrian smiled faintly. "Your mother is better at most things." Eleanor stood on the steps. He had changed during the months apart, not dramatically. Remorse had not turned him into another man. It had forced him to see clearly the man he had been. Adrian approached, but stopped several feet away. "The parliamentary record arrived this morning," he said. "Your name has been restored in every county register. I received a copy, and the final ownership papers for the Western estate. Signed and secured." He nodded. There was nothing left for him to offer as leverage. No title, no house, no fortune Eleanor did not already control. Only himself. "I once believed loving you meant protecting what belonged to me," he said. "When fear challenged that belief, I protected my pride instead of you." Eleanor said nothing. "I do love you," he continued, "but I understand that my love does not create an obligation for you." "What are you asking?" "Permission to remain near our sons, nothing more." James walked between them. "You live very far away." "The gate is less than half a mile from the house." "It feels far when it rains." William nodded. "And we need someone to lift us to the chapel window." Eleanor almost smiled. Adrian looked at her, but he did not use the children's wishes against her. "If their mother permits it," he said. Eleanor removed a key from her pocket. It was not the key to the main doors. It opened a small room beside the schoolroom, far from the ducal chambers they had once shared. She placed it in Adrian's hand. "You may return as their father." His fingers closed around the key. "And as your husband?" "Not yet." Hope and pain crossed his face together. "Then I will earn tomorrow, without demanding it today." Spring came slowly to Blackwood. The boys no longer wore numbered bracelets. Eleanor placed all 5 silver bands inside a wooden box, along with the scorched ledger, the embroidered berthcloth, and the iron key that had opened the underground chamber. Not to preserve their fear, to preserve the truth of how they survived it. One morning, the family returned to the restored palace chapel. There was no wedding, no crowd of nobles, no bride waiting to replace another woman. Only Eleanor, Adrian, and 5 boys standing beside the altar where the story had begun. James raised his chin. Which one of us did you mean to kill, Father? Adrian knelt so he could face them all. None of you. But I made choices that allowed other men to try. I will spend my life making certain you never carry the shame for what I did. Samuel stepped forward. Are you leaving again? No. You promised Mother things before. I did. So why should we believe you? Adrian looked toward Eleanor. You should not believe me because I am a duke, your father, or a man who says he is sorry. Believe only what I continue to do. Come. Eleanor felt the last wall around her heart shift, not collapse, but open enough to reveal a door. She walked to Adrian and placed the key to Blackwood House beside the schoolroom key in his palm. This does not erase the past. I know. It does not return the marriage we had. I know. If you enter that house again, you enter as my equal. You will never use your name, the law, or our son